have a moment of silent prayer, and then Mrs. Knight is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. You can be seated. Roll call, please.
Mr. Tankersley?
Here.
Mr. Wilson?
Here.
Mr. Coulter?
Here.
Mr. Levitt?
Here.
Mr. Cook?
Here.
Mrs. Knight? Here. Mr. Schmidt?
Here.
And Ed Cunningham is here.
Thank you. All right, reports or approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the May 31st regular council meeting minutes? Seeing none, those stand as written and distributed. Reports and communication, Mayor Hardman.
Thank you very much. The first thing I want to do is we've got lots of new folks coming, and you're going to hear from Elena again later, but I know I introduced her already. But one of those vacancies we anticipated or didn't anticipate, whichever way you may look at it, was Josh Santos, who decided to leave for another opportunity, which left us kind of, what are we going to do with our IT department, which is intimately tied to every other department within the city. So we started a search. We thought we would probably have some downtime, and well, we just happened to get a great candidate, and he's now been on the job for about 2 weeks now. Is that right, Jesse? Give or take? So it is my pleasure to introduce to you, come on up, Jesse King, who comes to us from the city of Middletown. I know that as soon as he walked in the door, we had plenty of work for him to do, right, gentlemen that are out there shaking their heads up and down? I'm sure Jesse can say the same thing. So we are very glad to have you. Welcome to you. Just say a few words, introduce yourself to the gang up here, and then we'll make you walk the gauntlet here in a second.
Right back over here.
That's okay.
So, yeah, my name is Jesse King. I've spent the last 17 years over at City of Middletown, so just a little bit down the road, but been supporting IT for them since a little bit after high school, and been able to learn a lot and really enjoyed working for city government, getting to do a lot of variety. It's one of my favorite things about working for municipal government. Working with different departments, public safety, and already it's been my first challenge here is just getting to know the staff here at Sharonville. Seems like a great team. I've been getting to know the department heads little by little, so look forward to some of the challenges that we have ahead of us. Any questions for me?
Anybody have questions? Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
All right, they like to
We're
shake
excited
hands.
to have
and
you. Oh, you heard about
Make
this.
your way down the, warned ahead of time. That's how it works.
Congratulations. We're going to be your biggest challenge. Just FYI.
Welcome again, sir.
Was I lying?
Yeah, the best news we have for you, Jesse, is Josh already set everybody up here with these things. So I think we've gotten through that initial not knowing what to do with these things. So hopefully we will be lesser of a concern than everybody else. It probably won't come through. But welcome. We're glad to have you. We expect good things out of you as we continue to service all of our departments. Thanks, Jesse. A few other announcements. So I want to thank our Public Works Department, our Fire Department, our Recreation Department, every other department, our Police Department that was involved in putting on another successful Touch-A-Truck this year, despite torrential rain in the afternoon and a last-minute change of venue. that was completely unexpected. I've heard nothing but good things for those that were able to attend in the hours that we were able to be up and open, and always a great event. I know it's a great way for us to get out there in the community. Congratulations to our Rachel and our HR group and everybody within the city with our recognition as another one of Ohio's best workplaces. So it's always nice to see that your contributions to our workforce are being paid off and being recognized outside of not just our boundaries, but by the employees that you help support that make our city run and function the way that it does. July 3rd is just around the corner, which means Stars and Stripes Under the Lights again this year. So I am excited about that evening. Hopefully we have compacted it enough that we will encourage folks to get there at the beginning and stay all the way till the fireworks at the end. We thank Princeton again for being very big and strong partners with us on that event by providing some booths and things for people to do. More details are forthcoming about all of the events that are taking place. So I am super excited about that. Hopefully you are too. I know last year the fireworks turned out really amazing and wonderful. I know we missed certain things that we're not able to do, and we'll continue to look at what we're going to do in the years coming forward, but good opportunity this year with the changes that are happening to the square, which hopefully you will be voting on tonight, and just to have fireworks again. So it's always a good event. So hopefully we'll see all of you out there for the evening, and hopefully everybody who's watching and all of you out there will make plans to head out for Stars and Stripes Under the Lights. That is what I have to report this evening. That I know there's stuff that's going to be covered from other folks, except to say there's a great big swim team season that started already. So there's a swim meet happening down the street of lots of great kids doing that. Let me just say the St. Michael's Children's Choir, I don't know if there's like 5 or 6 of those kids that are on the swim team, but they sang the national anthem before the last swim meet, and they did a fantastic, wonderful, amazing job.
They sang tonight also.
Did they?
And they had like 3 more people join them, so
super impressed.
It was great.
We're talking really young kids, so they did a fantastic job. Great way to start off the swim team season. And I will probably be running out on you a little early because I'm also have our annual Vacation Bible School Week up the street. So I have 85 to 12-year-olds that will be waiting for me to end the evening with them. I started it, I then put on my nice clothes again, and I'll go back up there and do a quick change. But so I will probably be running out on you a little early tonight to do that. But that's all I have for this evening, unless you have any questions.
Does anyone have questions for the mayor? Seeing none, we'll move on to our Safety Service Director, Mr. Lucas.
Thank you. Before we get into the legislation this evening, Kevin and Chase are here. It's from Ready Cincinnati. Elena's going to introduce them and give a little bit of a background for why they're here and turn it over.
Ready Cincinnati is our regional network partner to Jobs Ohio. And Jim asked me to do an introduction, but honestly, Kevin does not need an introduction. He is a Sharonville native. He is the Vice President of Project Management at Ready Cincinnati.
Thank you, Elena. I was so excited when I heard that Elena was coming down to Sharonville. It's the worst kept secret in our office, but of all of our communities in the 16 counties, this one is my favorite. So I think I've only got 10 minutes or so here with you all. Thank you so much for your investment in Ready Cincinnati. We quite the work that we do without the support of the city of Sharonville and community partners.
It should be up.
Sheesh.
Yeah, just maybe, there you go. You're right there in the
There
window.
we are, perfect.
I just hit F5 when we started.
So I'm just going to spend a few minutes with just a brief recap of Ready Cincinnati, who we are, what our mission is, and then focus on a couple highlights here in the city of Sharonville that we've had over the past several years. Feel free to interrupt the questions. I'm happy to answer, and if I don't have the answer for you, I'll get back to you in short order here in the next day or so. We like to, as I mentioned, we're made up of investors like the city of Sharonville. There's about 160 or so in total, and so we like to get out in front of as many as we can every year or so, just to make sure that we can kind of stay top of mind and answer questions and kind of just be a face to answer any questions on the economic development front if we can. Elena mentioned it briefly, but my name's Kevin Donnelly, born and raised in the city of Sharonville. My parents still live over on Malaire. Like I said, I have a very fond memories of this place, and it holds a special place in my heart, and happy to be here to represent Ready Cincinnati. So the Ready Cincinnati stands for the Regional Economic Development Initiative. We were started in 2014. This function was part of the Chamber of Commerce, the Cincinnati USA Regional Chamber, and a few different groups came together at the same time, one being the business community in the region, one being the local economic development professionals in the region, and the third being the state. Jobs Ohio was newly formed. Cincinnati just really, quite candidly, wasn't winning our fair share of projects. Historically, the chamber focused on a lot of international recruitment, and when we had Delta as a hub here, really cheap flights, direct flights anywhere in the world, it was an asset that cities of our size just didn't have and couldn't compete with. And as things changed, all three of those groups, for different reasons, realized we really need to kind of shift strategies, and Ready Cincinnati was born. Elaine also mentioned that we are a Jobs Ohio network partner. There's 6 of us across the state. Of course, Jobs Ohio is the state's privatized economic development function, formed in 2011 by Governor Kasich. We use profits of the liquor franchise, actually, to fund economic development here. So there's no state tax dollars used. Jobs Ohio pays a lease payment each year, and any dollars that are, any profits that are made over and above the agreement, there's a profit share, so the state actually receives even more money than the original agreement from Jobs Ohio. So every time you're buying a bottle of liquor or drinking liquor in the state of Ohio, you're helping to fund new jobs in the state. Ready Cincinnati, we have 2 functions, a little bit separate from all the rest of our partners across the state. Of course, Cincinnati has the distinct advantage of being right at the center of the tri-state region. So when we're doing business development and recruiting companies domestically and internationally, we're actually doing that on behalf of the entire 3-state region, all 16 counties of the MSA. And when it comes to Jobs Ohio partnership, we only focus that partnership on closing projects in the 5 southwestern counties that you can see here. Just a quick snapshot of those 16 counties of the MSA. So what is economic development? What we try to focus on mainly is proving to companies that they can be successful in this market. When you boil it down to the kind of the top 3 items that we're discussing with, it's sites, talent, and financial incentives. Sites and talent are 1A and 1B. If you don't have a site with adequate utilities, adequate square footage, appropriate ceiling heights, proximity to rail, the river, highways, you don't have a product that a company can even utilize. After that, this war of talent has been just heightened since COVID. Folks trying to understand, are they able to work from home? Are they able to work remotely anywhere in the country? Do they have to come into the office 1 day a week, no days a week, 5 days a week? And so those are the 2 things we're primarily dealing with as proof points, is trying to showcase that we can provide the success for companies and ongoing support for companies as they're making their location decisions. Incentives come in at a few different levels. There's local incentives, which obviously folks like you all have the discretionary power of. Then there's also state level incentives. It's our team that actually works with Jobs Ohio and the Department of Development to negotiate state level incentives. What we're always trying to do is identify, put everything in terms of speed, risk, and money. Can you help a company be successful quicker? Can you de-risk their project? And can you either save money for them, or can you get them making money faster? So we try to boil everything we do down to speed, risk, and money. One thing I want to touch on is sustainability. A lot of our competitors across the country use financial incentives differently than we do to offset a lot of upfront costs. We try to focus much more substantially on continued success. Companies that choose your city, your community, our region, the state of Ohio, need to be successful for the long term. So a lot of the services that we provide help grease the skids as they come in to land for a soft landing. But then we also focus on relationship building and success well beyond their decision. And of course, one thing that we always have an advantage of is our competitive cost of living, whether it comes to livability or assets for folks that are actually living here, or it comes to corporate advantages. Whatever you can find in large cities, you can also find in this region, which is a real asset. Where we have a real differentiator is that we have all of those things, but for a much more affordable cost. Ready Cincinnati undertook a 5-year strategic plan with great timing, right, in 2019. Kicked off the first year of it, things were going great. We're throwing a curveball with COVID, as was the rest of the world, quite frankly. And so we've kind of edited a little bit on this, on what we kind of prioritized. But things are still going well for us. And while COVID and the global pandemic paused this type of decision-making process that we deal with in economic development for about 6 months, over time, if you look at the 2 years of 2020 and 2021, we were at about 90 or 95% of those 2-year commitments. So 2020 was a little bit tight, but all of this corporate decision-making, it didn't go away, it just got delayed, and so we kind of did double duty in 2021. The pillars here, though, that we were focusing on in the strategic plan, booming business, this is essentially the work that we're doing every day. Global brand is all about making sure people across the world understand what it is that Cincinnati region has to offer. One of the big endeavors that we've had on that front was the World Cup bid. Unfortunately, we're not selected as a city. We're still working behind the scenes to see how this region can participate in supporting a successful 2026 World Cup. But other things you might have seen, our partnership with Kansas City in the AFC Championship game in the NFL. Just generally trying to get folks aware of the greater Cincinnati region. A talent hub, I already mentioned that, and sites and infrastructure. These are the two challenges that we're proactively trying to work to address in advance of companies coming here on their location decisions. Then everything we do is through the lens and supported by diversity, equity, inclusion. How can we ensure that as we're lifting up all boats that there's no one left behind? So we focus on a core set of industries and sub-industries. This is a list is made up of a couple things. One is where we know for a fact that this region has a right to win in. We've got employment base and what we refer to as a location quotient of employees, supply chains, et cetera, things that support industry that we know suppliers and others are going to come benefit from. Although it's not as great as an example is right now, we're actually seeing the negative effect of it, but I'll just pick on the aerospace industry for 1 second. You know, our neighbors down the street in Evendale have GE Aviation. There's a tremendous supply chain that comes with having GE Aviation located, in our backyard. From CVG with the Amazon Air Hub, DHL's one of their world hubs, all the way up to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton. This corridor is booming with things on the commercial and defense space and aerospace. Now we see we're coming out, but we saw a little bit of the negative effects on that with COVID. Absolutely grounded flights. You know, the aerospace industry took a lot of hits over the past couple years, and for that industry has suffered for us in the past couple years. However, things like food and flavoring, we've got a General Mills facility here that we helped expand. The food industry has been going gangbusters, and so while these industries represent just a snapshot of where we're spending our proactive time globally recruiting companies. Speaking of globally, when you cross-reference the foreign direct investment in our market and overlay it with those industries that are growing, this is where you'll find companies making investments. We actually just had a team that was in Italy and Spain last week, working with some companies that have already decided to locate here over the past few years. They're helping introduce us into their supply chains and companies that they've got networks with in those two countries to help recruit them to choose the Midwest as their new market entry location for the U.S. But this is generally where we spend most of our time. I know I'm moving pretty fast here. Any questions? I mentioned this briefly at the onset, but all the work that we do is supported by investors. Jobs Ohio is our single largest investor, but they are in no means our only one. We've got public and private investors, about 160 of them, that fund the work that we do. folks like Procter & Gamble and Fifth Third were there at the onset, and our largest private investors, folks like Hamilton County, of course, and the city of Cincinnati, our largest public investors. But literally every dollar counts to do this work. The city of Sharonville is actually on our board of directors, and Jim is the representative on the board. And so there's extra opportunities to engage with Ready, our staff, and the mission and the work that we do at that level. That's a very brief overview of the work that we do. I'm going to jump now into some of the successes that we've had in partnership over the past few years. So this is the regional success of Ready Cincinnati since our inception. Or excuse me, this is in 2021. There were 95 projects won in the 3 states. Our goal was 70. You can see that accounts for over 7,000 new job commitments. Again, we exceeded goals last year in 2021 on all of the major metrics. Generally, what we're keeping track of is total project commitments, that is total decisions made. The jobs, payroll, and capital investments are all commitments from the company. Anyone who receives financial incentives at either the local or the state level are entering into agreements to contractually obligate them to commit to those metrics. Typically, there are over 3 or 5 year windows. So all these jobs aren't necessarily recognized in 2021, but these are all the job commitments from that year. And then business retention expansion visits, I highlighted it earlier. We visit in Southwest Ohio about 260 companies each year with our staff and our partnerships. Thank you, Elena, for setting up so many BREs already this year in Sharonville. And this is really to keep our finger on the pulse of what's going on in the community and particular industries that we're focusing on targeting, or if we're catching wind of folks that maybe went through a merger and acquisition, have leadership changes, just trying to make sure we're getting in front of them to address any challenges or support any growth opportunities. Since our inception, this in our partnership specifically, these are the projects that we've won in the city of Sharonville specifically. 1,700 new jobs and nearly $70 million in new payroll. So really substantial success together. And then just quickly to highlight a couple of companies, I think TruePill was one that we won last year. This is a company is in the pharmaceutical space, in the medical space. Online, they provide nationwide pharmaceutical support. They do some third-party logistics support. They also do some generic drug distribution throughout the country. We know with the rising cost of healthcare, companies like this that are web-based to service the entire country, are just one kind of chip away at rising costs. Sugar Creek is one of this region's largest private companies, and they committed to a new factory in Sharonville a couple years ago as well. And this was actually on the back of a bacon boom. They're just simply making bacon at the new facility. Food and flavoring obviously remains strong in the region, but even more specifically in the city of Sharonville. Everyone's familiar with General Mills, who committed to 33 new jobs at the cereal factory there near Princeton. And I thought I had Gorilla Glue up here. The last time I was here speaking to this group was for Gorilla Glue's most recent expansion. I think that happened in 2020, though, or 2019. Of course, with the added expansion of O'Keeffe's. If you don't use the hand lotion product, it's phenomenal that they are going to start making here locally at their Sharonville facility. So again, only had 10 minutes. I hope that was quick enough. Happy to answer any questions if you guys
Who gave you
have any.
10 minutes?
Come on.
I'm in charge here. You can have as long as you want.
Thank you, Mrs. Hoppy.
You don't have to hurry. Does anyone have questions, Mayor?
I don't have a question. I just want to thank you, Kevin. I want to thank
Yeah.
Betty for the great partnership that you guys have had with the city of Sharonville. I think you've just shown how important you have been to our city and maintaining the tax base that we have been able to maintain over the last several years. I mean, I don't know how many times we've heard from Scott. We don't know how we're going to be able to maintain. We've got the highest rate we've ever been. We're at the highest this. It was like, we're never going to keep that. And then it just, the next month is the highest month.
year,
But
yeah.
thank you for your partnership. Hopefully, I know Elena's already working closely with you
Oh, yeah.
and looking forward to that continued partnership. So I appreciate
Thanks,
it. Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else have questions? No. Thank you.
Great job, Kate.
Very nice.
Okay, moving on to the legislation, ordinance 2022-30E, was a subject of the first reading that Anna spoke to at the last council meeting, prohibiting smoking in our playgrounds and splash pads. Anna couldn't be here tonight, but she spoke on that last meeting. It's up for a vote this evening. Ordinance 2022-33E is a four-part ordinance. Scott and Chief Sunderman will tag team on this one.
I think the first two reading the ordinance from top to bottom are geared towards the fire marshal and EMS coordinator. So I think we go first.
All right, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me this evening. So the first two parts of this ordinance are fire department based and it's somewhat two-piece. So I'm going to start with the fire marshal. This is a title change and a pay increase for what we currently have titled as a senior fire inspector. This came to me in part because I found out through the fire service, not only in the county but around the state, that our fire inspector was actively being headhunted. That took me down the path of looking at pay scales in the area for that position and found that Sharonville was at the lower range, about $10,000 lower than the next lowest in the area. So increasing that pay was important, and part of that also was changing that title to fire marshal, which will help our senior fire inspector. That has some more meaning when he's doing state reporting and our hotel inspections and school inspections and things along those lines. So that is why we made that title change. So that is also part of the piece of the puzzle where we are going to take that office, that division, and change it from a inspection division to a community risk reduction division. That takes me to the next proposal, which is our EMS coordinator. And this is what you have historically known, or I should say knew a year and a half ago, as our rain nurse. So this will be filling the position of the rain nurse. And again, part of this came about since we had an opening position is, do we need to reimagine this? Were we doing actually what we should be, or are there better ways to do it? So through some conversation with Michael Bloomer at the rec department and Andrea Glassman, who was working with the seniors, now obviously Sue is, and then talking to some other communities with community paramedicine programs, where we narrowed down is we could get the most bang for our buck if we had a dual certified nurse and paramedic on staff. So there wasn't necessarily enough work that we would need that full-time just nurse in the community, not necessarily enough work where we just need that extra function in the EMS side of the fire business. But if we bring those together, that obviously becomes enough work for a full-time position. And again, and part of that, part of this ordinance is changing the pay ordinance. And as you'll notice, the pay scale for the nurse position has come up quite a bit, which basically is just what has happened to the market over about the last year and a half. And again, just to give a little perspective, we did have a part-time nurse position posted for, I think, 8 months off the top of my head, with zero interest. So again, that's part of what got us down the path of making this a dual certified nurse medic position. Any questions on that part of it? Yes?
Mrs. Knight?
Yeah, and our committee meeting, we talked about maybe changing the name instead of EMS coordinator. I just feel that our seniors will not understand that that is a program that's good for them. And I just think we need to maybe just add a little nurse or something. Yeah.
Actually, I did talk to my command staff about that, and I absolutely see your point. And so to what Mrs. Knight is talking about is that title of EMS coordinator, she's afraid might not really tell the seniors that this person is a nurse for them, for the community. And that came about in part with the job description and how the classified versus unclassified, and if we had a dual certification in that job title, what that actually does to classified and unclassified and exempt and non-exempt and those things. We worked with HR on that. And where we landed is we can put whatever we want on her business card, quite frankly. You know, if that business card needs to read, you know, community nurse or something along those lines. And obviously, this person will be at the senior meetings, and we can educate the seniors as to, that explain to them that this is what they historically knew as our RAIN nurse.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mayor.
I just wanted to add
Just go down.
one thing with regard to the inspector role and that new job. This was not really a reaction to somebody saying, give me a raise or I'm leaving. I want everyone to understand that I think Kevin has been fantastic for us. We certainly don't want to lose him, so we're trying to stay out in front of that possibility, but also we realize that the market is such that if we don't address this now, we won't be able to replace him at where we're at. So that's why, so obviously we have a great person who's doing a fantastic job. Hopefully he is going to continue with us for a very long time, and this will help do that, and certainly rewards him for the job that he has done for us as a city. But I just want you all to know this is not because somebody has come to us demanding a change. It was a matter of, we looked at what the market is, we looked at what we have, and we really have a great asset here, and how can we appropriately compensate as well as place the appropriate title upon that person. So, and I thank the chief for bringing that to our attention, for us to bring it to your attention to hopefully make that happen tonight.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, Mr. Mayor, and yeah, I literally heard this through the grapevine. I did not hear this from our fire inspector, and frankly, when I walked into his office and asked him about it, he was pretty shy to let me know that he was being headhunted, and he is very loyal to the city of Sharonville. He's been with us for a long time. So.
It's my thing here, that your men already come to the seniors, do the blood pressure checks, so they're becoming much more comfortable dealing with them instead of the RAIN nurse per se. So that transition already has been occurring. And I think that's really will help the whole situation, because they do an excellent job too. So they interact extremely well. And I think they're well appreciated. And so it's a nice transition, and it does give us a much better approach to everything. Thank you.
Mr. Coulter?
Yeah, so the creation of the CMS coordinator position, this will then completely eliminate the RAIN nurse position from the city description, correct?
Right, this is
Yes.
essentially a replacement of, yes, this person will, and let me explain this does actually really confuse some people, and this might be a little confusing. A nurse, while higher trained than a paramedic, is not allowed to function on an ambulance, which I know that probably sounds a little strange that is a higher level of healthcare, but with the way the rules are written, that's why we went for the dual certified. So the nurse certification will allow them to do what you're referring to as what the RAIN nurse previously was doing, and then also being a paramedic allows that person to actually ride on the ambulances, where we meet some of those customers that need the extra help that is normally outside of our purview of EMS.
From a budget standpoint, though, there still is going to be a portion that's going to come from the general fund to pay the salary. However, the fire fund is taking up a greater percentage than what it did under the past policy. But
Yeah, we actually flip-flopped the past policy. The past policy was 60-40, with general fund 60, fire 40, and we flipped that. So the general fund will take on 40, the fire will take on 60.
And also, as we discussed at Law Committee, one of the really, really key functions that this position takes care of, for a lot of our folks, if you don't have a child, a spouse, or someone who really is close to you, you can't get the necessary resources and who to contact. And this is the really key role, the most important one. That was the biggest change and the biggest concern when we went from our health department to Hamilton County. And we're well along the way of doing that, and it is just so vitally important. And we talked about that, and I like that idea of how you're doing it. I like the holistic approach, something that we thought about way back when. Didn't quite get it then, but we got it now, so I'm very pleased with this. Thank you, Chief.
Mr. Tankersley?
Thank you. Thank you. Chief, is this going to be a new position created? Do you have somebody with in-house that has gone through the nursing school program, certified?
So I'm going to answer that in two parts, and part of it is something that Mr. Lovett brought up too during Law Committee. So yes, we do have an employee that fits this bill working for us right now. She is a nurse. Her full-time job is a nurse. She works part-time for us as a paramedic and has been with the department for right around 2.5 years, and has been doing an awesome job for us. In all fairness, I have not put her on the spot and said, or will you leave your current job for this? I didn't think that was fair. And part of my answer to that, and again, to address part of what Mr. Lovett brought up at Law Committee, is, are these people out there? We happen to have one at Sharonville, and I have talked to, various ER departments and various nurses, and that dual certification is out there. And generally speaking, those will be some of the nurses that tend to be instructors that work in emergency departments. Some of those tend to be nurses that are on the air medical services around the county and around the area that have to be nurses and paramedics. And so they get 15 plus years under their belt. They get tired of working weekends and nights and making flights. And so we would, if the individual working for us isn't interested in this position, there are others out there that would be able to fill it.
Okay, I was just trying to figure out through the years, there's been, I thought, EMS coordinators, and then all of a sudden, we're looking at a nurse going into a EMT classification and becoming the EMS coordinator.
We've never had an EMS coordinator. We have a medical director, might be what you're thinking. We have a physician.
Our chief, the EMS director or coordinator.
I'm not aware of ever having that title in the fire.
Well, I'm just saying, that's what,
Training coordinator, maybe.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Okay. No, like I said, I'm old, gray, not as young as I used to be. I just thought I'd ask. Thank you.
Are there,
That's right. That's kind of crystallize a little bit of what Law Committee is. When we vote on a lot of these issues, we kind of go around the table, and sometimes we get the allocation where there's a bunch of nodding heads. But the real vetting of all these ordinances and resolutions is really done in Law Committee. And you can see that right now when Mr. Lovett had comments, Sue had comments, I had comments, very good discussions, Mr. Lippert. Those are that really is what Law Committee does. And a lot of people aren't necessarily aware of that. So when these ordinances and resolutions come up, they have been really thoroughly discussed. That was a very thorough, I thought a good discussion, Chief, at Law Committee. And that's usually, many citizens feel more comfortable coming to Law Committee and sitting around the table than perhaps coming to this council meeting where ICRC is doing their thing to all the communities. So it really was a good example of what happens in Law Committee with a lot of investigation of proposals. So take that as an example.
okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Did you have a question, Mr. Wilson?
No.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
Good evening. As we mentioned, there are kind of four parts to the ordinance, so I wanted to discuss about kind of the third and fourth piece. First of all, I collaborated with Rachel on writing the legislation, and the biggest thing, takeaway I learned was that the word marshal, when referring to a police or fire position, is spelled with one L, not two. So we considered a whereas that would be in Webster Dictionary to explain that.
There you go.
The word marshal with two L's was not until the late 40s or 50s when George Marshall, famous for the Marshall Plan, kind of rose to prominence. So two L's is more common for the verb. Yeah.
And time's up.
You just deal with a little bit of what we deal with every day.
I thought that was fascinating the other day when
Thank you. We
Yeah.
appreciate that,
Have
Scott.
you ever tried out for Jeopardy yet?
No.
Okay.
A couple other pieces, other things done with this ordinance is the creation of an assistant finance director position. That's not been one we necessarily had. The finance department's been stacked in different ways over the decades. With the recent attrition of a couple different positions in admin finance, it kind of gave us the opportunity to kind of look at restacking, rebuilding the department and making the most logical sense. And one thing I think we needed was through our discussions was to get something, a position with some more heavy finance lifting, be able to do some more stuff, able to cross-train kind of amongst the other finance members over to payroll a little bit to help out with that. Take some lifting off of my plate, assist a great deal with sort of the collaborating on the financial statements, whether it's to do it or to do it together, and to be able to provide more opportunity for some succession planning in some ways, and go from there. There will be the kind of the base accounts receivable function that's sort of vacant today. That'll be kind of the role, and roll with there with a lot of financial statement preparation and assisting with things I do. So, the fourth item is just a very minor transition. That's the civil service secretary to be kind of better compliant with FLSA. It transfers what is now in the salary ordinance a monthly amount. If that position is filled by an appointed, if the appointee is a Sharonville full-time employee, they would receive a additional hourly add-on rate. This is very similar to what we do with the chief building official, so it kind of mirrors that section of the ordinance that we added a couple of years ago. So, any questions about either one of those items?
Any questions?
Or the word Marshall?
We're good with Marshall.
All right, good deal. All right. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
All right. Ordinance 2022-34E. If you recall, last year we were successful with a SORTA grant application. This is submitting another grant application, and Steve's here to talk about that tonight.
Good evening. Did you know that SORTA started back in, no, I'm kidding. This grant application is applying for SORTA money to do a repave on the bike path, the multi-use path, currently on the south side of Kemper Road from 42 over to almost Mosteller. Part of the grant application requirements this year is to improve access to existing bus stops if there are bus stops along the route. On that route, the bus stops are on the north side of Kemper Road, on the south side. So this project proposes to improve some crosswalks, intersections close to those bus stops, and adds a little bit of sidewalk for access to one of the stops. Overall, it'll allow us to repave that path, some ADA accessibility on that path, and then improve access to those bus stops. So we're approaching that at a 70-30 match on a $400,000 project. So, any questions?
Any questions? Mr.
Okay, that 70-30 split, finding really the soft spot and what to do, was also discussed extensively at Law Committee. Part of it is, remember, that path had been discussed and requested by a number of citizens when we were talking about the 42 sidewalks at Kemper, and also this came up as a topic in the 5-year plans as this needing work. So it kind of ties it all together, and Steve really did a nice job putting it all together. Jim on his, I would call it grantsmanship, to see how we could best suit it and position ourselves on what we were willing to spend of our own, how we were going to come up with a program, which is very well done also. Thanks, Steve.
Any other questions? Thank you.
All right, ordinance 2235E. So last March, I believe it was, council passed an appropriation ordinance for the downtown loop project. The intent of that was to also award to the lowest and best bidder, put that approval into that legislation. The legislation did everything else. The intent was to include it, however, it didn't. So tonight is just making up for that error and giving the explicit authority to award the project to the lowest bidder once we know those, once the bid comes back. Elena's here tonight to talk about ordinance 2022-36E, which Ready Cincinnati is helping us with. We also have a late delivery request with another economic development incentive project that I'll Elena, if it's okay. Do we need to?
That's fine.
Okay.
We'll do a late delivery of it, but that's fine. Go ahead and talk about both. It's exciting.
Sure, yeah. Like Jim said, this is perfect timing because Ready Cincinnati, I worked with both of them on these. The first one we're calling Project Shine. This is a local company that has an expansion project. They have an out-of-state location in Tennessee that actually has square footage to handle this new equipment, and they say about a pool just because it's less competitive. So what they would be doing is adding on to their current building. Current square footage is 118,000. The addition would be 6,800. And this would create 20 new full-time jobs. They currently have 80 full-time with $6 million in payroll, and so this will add $1.24 million in payroll. And so on both of these are just prospective right now. I'm just coming to get your approval to enter into an agreement. They both are in the decision-making process, which is why we requested emergency delivery, just trying to help them out, and with only one meeting in July, I didn't want to extend that too much longer. Do you have any questions? And then the other one I'm calling Project June. This is a company in the region. There isn't any out-of-state competition, so likely they will not be working with Ready Cincinnati. But locally, they're looking at Blue Ash, Mason here, as well as Woodlawn. They're currently in Woodlawn. They have looked around. There's just, as you know, limited space. Current facility is 6,500. They're looking at space here in Sharonville. It's 17,500. They would bring 61 jobs with current payroll of $4 million, and expect to increase it 10 a year over the next 6 years. So at both of these, I am looking at a 3-year, 35% job creation incentive grant. Any questions on the last one?
Are there any questions? Thank you.
Okay. Ordinance 223070 is also late delivery with a revised title and legislation at your seats this evening. Steve is here to talk about the curb and sidewalk project and why this piece of legislation is being considered.
So we went to bid on our yearly curb and sidewalk project. If you remember earlier this year, we added appropriations to that project. Bids came in more than 10% over the city's estimate, the engineers, quote-unquote engineers estimate on that project, and came in more than 10% over what the appropriations. This ordinance will allow us to rebid that project, which is required by Ohio Revised Code. And I am recommending, and I believe Kevin, in talks with Kevin, we recommend that we are going to reduce the size of the project right now to fit within what our current appropriations are, rather than asking for additional appropriations. Concrete is at an all-time high, and it's just fiscally responsible to try to keep within our own appropriations and see what happens going forward with the rest of the project in other years. With this permission, we'll get this project back out to bid as soon as possible. I've already basically scoped out which portions that we'll cut out, so we can get it back out to bid as quick as possible. Any questions?
I have a question for you. I love that. First, how do I turn my microphone on? So the things I understand, we're kind of scaling down the project. Is it for the purpose of, obviously they are things that need to be done, but may not have immediate need that we're scaling back? Is that the way?
Yes.
That
Yes.
you kind of made those decisions?
Yep.
And hoping that we'll get a leveled out
And whatever,
cost of.
what does come out of this year's project would be at the forefront of next year's project. So when we come to develop next year's curb and sidewalk, that'll be at the top of the list as a no cut. You know, if we end up having to scale it back based on call-ins or other concrete and stuff that's found in the area. We know this was bad from this year. We know it was cut from this year. So it will be at the top priority for next year's project.
They answered perfectly, thank you. Do you believe that the trend then in cost is that it's going to level or possibly take it
Lord,
down
I hope
for-
so.
But yeah, don't we all, don't we all, okay, all right, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you very much.
And then the last piece of legislation, Resolution 22R18E, was really sparked by council's initiative with the budget in terms of employee recognitions and employee morale. Rachel formed a citywide employee committee to seek out ideas and concepts, and she's finalizing that. But the very first thing that employees asked for, which has been asked for numerous years, is a full access pass to the community center. If you remember, prior to our fitness center upgrade and space-wise, it just really wasn't feasible to offer that. Michael Palomer has no concerns at this point with offering it now to the employees. Right now, full-time employees have access to the full community center with the exception of the fitness center, and part-time employees have access to just they don't have access to the pool or the fitness center. They have access to everything else. So this would allow full-time and part-time employees to have access to the entire facility.
As an individual
Yes.
and
as
at
an
no
individual.
cost?
Right.
Okay, right.
And then obviously, if they want to do a family type thing, it would be a reduced cost because
As a tier.
Right.
Great.
So this is
Wonderful
something that the employees have been asking for since I've gotten here, and probably years prior. So hopefully council supports this tonight.
First time we heard it.
That you've heard of that?
Uh-huh.
Really?
And I was on the rec committee. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank Rachel. Are there any questions? Okay. I really don't have a report. Just a reminder, we only have one meeting next month, and it is July 19th, so remember that. The mayor already talked about July 3rd, so I think we're good there. So we'll go on to our clerk of council, Mrs. Buhite.
Thanks. Just announcing that a public hearing is scheduled for July 19th at 7 p.m. in council chambers regarding the annual tax budget for year ending December 31, 2023.
And we'll go to our auditor, Mr. Cunningham.
No report.
Perfect. Treasurer, Mr. Irie.
No report.
And our law director is absent with notice. We're on to Mr. Bosom, our Public Works Director. And I see you brought your muscle with you.
He was supposed to put my walk. I was told more than once to be brief.
Who keeps telling
So
me
you
you
all
guys to
have
be
my
brief?
report. Are there any questions? All right, thank you.
Did Glenn tell you to be brief?
Glenn doesn't know how to be brief. I'm not going to ask somebody else to be brief.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to I'm going to go through this in a little bit different order this year than I did last year and Joe has in the past. But some of the equipment that you guys authorized us to purchase in last year, we actually got a new skid steer, which was very much needed. We got the last skid steer prior to us doing the undercoating rust inhibitor treatment, and so that last one got into the salt without that coating and got eaten up pretty good. This one was coated before it touched salt, so it should last us a lot longer. It's a great upgrade to our equipment selection. Our winter season felt really, really long. When I went back and looked at the totals, there really wasn't all that bad. We had 7 total snow or ice events with 14 inches of snow, which is actually a little bit below average. Overall, salt we used just under 1,300 tons, with Princeton using 155 of those tons. Our total expenses were $109,000, almost $110,000, but our 10-year average is $145,000. So we were well under our 10-year average. If you remember, we had a couple large snow events, including that large sleet event. But overall, it wasn't too bad of a snow season. Another great thing is we had no major breakdowns during a snow event to delay our response. So overall, I think the guys did a great job. One big thing to see in these numbers is our truck fuel expense. It's more than double last year's. Last year was a worst winter. Obviously, fuel prices have skyrocketed, so it's something that we'll need to adjust going forward. But overall, it was a pretty good season. Some projects we got done this year. We did our annual curb and sidewalk project in '21 and our crack seal and street line roadway painting project. Capital projects wise, most of these got started in '21, finished, or are still ongoing in '22. Houck Road is up there. In '21, they got the culvert installed across Houck Road, which was a major portion of that project. Sharon Road got started and finished resurfacing this year. They're working on getting master arm poles up now. I saw them actually on site today. Kemper Road sidewalk got started and finished this year. It has been hydro-seeded, so we're waiting on the grass to grow, but otherwise there's an RRFB that's got to be installed at the crosswalk, and it's good. It's pretty much ready to go. I think that was a great improvement to Kemper Road. Some pictures of that project on the screen. And then we had Kemper Road resurfacing. There's a couple punch list items to be done on that between Chester Road and Mosteller, but it is basically finished up. Building lands maintenance, we replaced some garage doors on the public works garages. We replaced half of them last year, and we are slated to get the other half replaced this year. And along with the landscaping was redone last year outside in front of City Hall. So if we move forward on some of these, you got a couple pictures on the top right of the new landscaping, as you've seen in City Hall. I think it really cleaned up City Hall. I think that was a nice improvement. Pictures, and then, yeah, it's new pavement. New pavement's new pavement. But there's Sharon Road on the bottom left and Kemper Road in the middle on the bottom. Recycling program last year was a slight increase from 2020. We recycled a total of 680 tons within the city, and we will receive a check for $10,853 from the Residential Recycle Initiative in Hamilton County. I want to work with Anna this year a little bit on that program to try to see what we can do to increase recycling through the city. The city offers recycling no charge to the residents. It's just a matter, I think, getting the word out there that to increase that. Golden View Acres for 2021. We had a total of 9 apartments renovated. If you remember last year, we had to come back and get some reappropriations for the refunds. Security deposit refunds and stuff. We had a lot of moving around in GVA last year. I apologize. I believe the numbers at the very top are incorrect. I think those are still from 2020. But we did, total revenues for 21 was $324,000. Again, that was down a little bit from 2020. Big reason for that was we had 9 apartments that were vacant for periods of time as they were being renovated. As of actually today, even June 1st, but then today I checked, we still have 2 apartments vacant. One of those should be up for we're calling on, and another one is close to being ready to be rented. So we're almost at 100% capacity at GVA. Capital improvement projects up at GVA is we got new roofs on the building this year, which was a major, well, in the budget in 21, they got completed this year, which was a major improvement to those buildings. So.
Steve, where were you at with the fire?
That's in the 2022 report.
No, but so we'll hear about that next year.
We're still working with the insurance adjusters and the demolition company, Teasdale Fenton, and they're trying to come together on what it's going to cost for the demo. The Teasdale Fenton, the contractor has come up. The insurance claims adjuster came up with different from each other, and they're trying. Should be moving forward. So. Overall, are the operators and public works maintenance crew. They have a total average years of service of 13 years. We have 2, well, in 2021, we had 2 permanent part-time employees. Richard Harmon, but all the others of them. Is the resident old guy. He's been here for 30 years. And he made the comment recently that back in 1997 when he started, he told them that when he got a better offer, he would leave. Well, he's still here. So, you know, we got the accolades of being one of the best places to work, and that just again, just this week, he made that comment. So 33 and a half years later, he still hasn't had a better offer than working here at the city of Sharonville. This picture of the streets maintenance guys, our mechanic and Andy Bauer of GVA. The mechanic all the way on the right in the gray, that's Rick Ostendorf. He plans to retire January 2023. It's well-deserved, but it will definitely be a miss for the department. Does a great job with our preventative maintenance. He's famous for his quote this year that snow removal starts in the garage. We didn't quite understand that, but he did. He can be greatly attributed to the fact that we have had 0 breakdowns during snow events this year. Next one over from the right is Andy Bauer. He's gotten plenty of accolades this year, well-deserved for his reaction to the fire up at GVA. But other than that, aside from that, just on a day-to-day, the residents absolutely love him up there at GVA. And through his ability and Josh Power standing next to him, as they go through and they renovate these apartments, they're doing it in-house themselves, including totally replumbing these apartments, which has greatly driven down our overtime call-in costs for plumbing leaks. So between the two of them, but particularly Andy, it's just done a phenomenal job getting those buildings back up to where they should be for our residents of Sharonville. Mike Carlson, there in the middle, he's back here. I'm going to give him some props. In 2021, especially in 2021, Joe Kempe retired early 21, and Mike and Lori ran the show until April when I got in, and really for another month at least after while I got my feet wet. He'd probably say he's still running it today. But he's done a phenomenal job. Got a great rapport with the guys. Knows what needs to get done and knows how to get it done. The only other one I'll pick on tonight up there is Johnny Wynell up in the bed of the pickup truck. He's basically taking over the grass crew, keeping the tall grass cut for complaints around, and keeping the city grass cut that we don't have on contract. He's newly married and expecting a baby in August, so congratulations to him. He has no idea how life's going to change. Our parks guys. These guys take care of all of our city parks and a lot of maintenance in the rec center. They keep ball fields lined, they keep grass cut, they keep the shelters cleaned up. They do it all basically except taking care of the pool. I'd like to point out Dwayne on the far right and Luke in the middle. Those guys are parks maintenance laborers, but they've also got CDLs, so they're a big part of our snow response every year. So I'd just like to point that out for the benefit they provide to the streets department for our snow removal, our snow response. And then our last but definitely not least, my admin, Lori. She's the face of the department. As people come in, she answers the phone. She triages a lot of calls. She talks a lot of people down, a lot of angry people down, and she doesn't ever seem to get flustered. Even with me in the office right next door to her. I don't quite understand it, but she's an absolute tremendous asset to the department. So I thank you all for allowing us to have such a great department. I thank you for the budget to do some great projects and your support through the years. I hope for your continued support going forward.
Great,
Any
thank
questions?
you. Are there any questions?
Stayed awake. Thank you.
Thank you. And you guys do a great job. Are there any residents that would like to be heard this evening? Mr. Schmidt, come on up.
Tim Schmidt, 12215 Pickwick Place. I wasn't planning to say anything tonight, but I've made this comment before and I'm going to say it again. The Public Works Department for the city of Sharonville does a tremendous job, not just with snow removal, but with everything else. Thank you.
Completely agree. Yes.
I forgot to say it while I was up here before, but I would like to publicly thank the fire department. They've been tremendous this week and last week with storm response. We had guys called in on Monday night to cut up trees, but they had crews out cutting up trees and clearing streets, walking door to door, checking on people, walking the street. That was absolutely fantastic. So they helped us on Monday. They helped us get access to fuel when Princeton fuel was down. They helped us get access to diesel fuel for our chipper and our dump trucks. And then just this week, their water rescue team helped us out getting a beaver dam out of the Mill Creek. So they've been phenomenal to work for, so thank you very much. We've greatly appreciated their help over the last couple of weeks.
Good teamwork. Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard this evening? Council committees, community development, Mr. Wilson.
There'll be a meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals and Planning Committee on July the 12th, at 6:30.
Perfect, thank you. Community service, Mr. Lovett.
No report, but our next meeting is July 6th, Wednesday. Yes, the Wednesday, July 6th at 4 p.m.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Budget and finance, Mr. Cook.
Thank you. No report for budget and finance and no report for project oversight, but I would like to state that the project oversight meeting that was scheduled for this evening is rescheduled for July 19th. And the budget and finance meeting that was scheduled on July 19th will be rescheduled to August 9th. And all of those meetings are at 6 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you. Honored citizens, Mrs. Knight.
Tonight, I'm going to add what the mayor said and what Steve said. Tonight, I'm honoring the workers from Sharonville, the rec center, the public works, the fire and police department. The past 3 weeks has been a busy time for all of them. From the pool getting zapped from lightning, and they had to drain the pool, wait for electric. They already started to fill the pool. They couldn't do anything with it, so it turned brown. So then they had to wait to get everything fixed. So then they drained it and they got it working. To the touch-a truck having to be moved from Princeton to the rec center in a very short time, and it was an excellent program. Brought my little grandson down, and thank you, Vicki Hoffey's grandsons helped me with him, getting him in the truck and out of the truck, because I am old. And the 3 days of the power outage for at least half of Sharonville, I just appreciate your quick response and readiness to help all the citizens. And on a personal note, I'd like to thank the fire department, because these hot evenings last Tuesday and tonight have been so warm. They have sent some firefighters to help some grandma and grandpas pass out. We did have one that wasn't feeling really good, so I'm glad they were there. And to help all our dehydrated swimmers, but we didn't have one, so anyway, thank you.
Great, thank you. Law and Public Safety, Mr. Schmidt.
The next Law and Public Safety Committee meeting will be July 12th, 4 p.m., Administrative Conference Room. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you. Is there a motion to accept late delivery of Emergency Ordinance 2022-38E regarding Project June? So moved by Mr. Coulter, second by Mr. Wilson. And it would also include, Emergency Ordinance 2022-3070. Is that still okay? Perfect, thank you. All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
All those opposed, no. And we will accept late delivery of those two ordinances. I need a motion for rule suspension for first and only reading for ordinances 2022-33E, 2022-34E, 2022-35E, 2022-36E, 2022-37E, 2022-38E, and Resolution 2022-R18E. Is there a motion? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Lovett, and this is for first and only reading with immediate effectivity. Then I need a motion for second and third reading with immediate effectivity of ordinance 2022-30E. So moved by Mrs. Knight, second by Mr. Wilson. Is there any discussion on any of these? All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Those opposed, no, and those both carry. Unfinished business.
Okay. The second and third reading of ordinance 2022-30E, adding section 521.17, prohibiting smoking in city-owned playground areas to the Sharonville Codified Ordinances and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-30E? So moved by Mr. Cook, second by Mr. Lovett. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr.
Yes.
Schmidt?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Ordinance 2022-30E has been approved. Thanks. Second reading of emergency ordinance 2022-31, authorizing the safety service director to enter into a joint use agreement with the University of Cincinnati in conjunction with a $600,000 grant. And that is unfinished.
We'll move on to new business.
First and only reading of ordinance 2022-33E, authorizing the creation of a full-time administrative fire marshal and EMS coordinator positions to the fire department and the assistant finance director position to the finance department, and amending the salary ordinance for the Civil Service Commission secretary and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-33E? So moved by Mr. Lovett, second by Mr. Schmidt. Is there any discussion? Mr. Tankersley?
With the way this is reading, it says authorizing a full-time administrative clerk position to the fire department. It doesn't say anything about the fire marshal, unless it's somewhere in the ordinance.
Yeah, open up the
Okay.
amended ordinance.
Okay. I was just going off of what's showing here,
Oh.
the agenda.
No, the amended ordinance.
Okay.
Did agenda.
Yeah, it's under the
Okay.
agenda. You're under the old agenda.
Okay.
It's
That's the
okay.
only agenda I got.
It's in the folder. It says amended, but it's okay. It does include fire marshal, EMS coordinator, as she read. So,
Okay.
any other questions? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Ordinance 2022-33E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-34E, authorizing safety service director to prepare and submit a funding application to the Southwest Ohio Regional Transportation Authority for transit infrastructure funds for repaving of the asphalt path on Kemper Road and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-34E? So moved by Mr. Cook, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion on this? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2022-34E has been approved. Sure. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-35E, authorizing the safety service director to sign a contract with the lowest and best bidder on the Sharonville Downtown Loop project and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-35E? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Coulter. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2022-35E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-36E, authorizing the safety service director to enter into a job creation incentive grant for Project Shine and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-36E? So moved by Mr. Wilson, second by Mr. Lovett. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2022-36E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-37E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to reject all bids received for the 2022 sidewalk curb and gutter project, rebid the project, enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder, and appropriating additional funds. Okay, I'll try it again. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-37E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to reject all bids received for the 2022 sidewalk curb and gutter project, rebid the project, and enter into a contract with the lowest and best bidder, and declaring an emergency.
Okay. Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-37E? So moved by Mr. Cook, second by Mrs. Knight. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley? Yes. Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2022-37E has been approved. First and only reading of emergency ordinance 2022-38E, authorizing the Safety Service Director to enter into a job creation incentive grant for Project June and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass ordinance 2022-38E? So moved by Mr. Lovett, second by Mr. Schmidt. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
And Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Emergency ordinance 2022-38E has been approved. First and only reading of resolution 2022-R18E, authorizing the approval of community center Tier 1 combo membership for all city employees and declaring an emergency.
Is there a motion to pass? Moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Coulter. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call.
Mr. Tankersley?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Coulter?
Yes.
Mr. Lovett?
Yes.
Mr. Cook?
Yes.
Mrs. Knight?
Yes.
Mr. Schmidt?
Yes.
Resolution 2022-R18E has been approved.
Perfect. This is another opportunity for residents that wish to be heard this evening. Seeing none, are there any other matters that wish to be heard before council? Anybody else? Nope, okay. Is there a motion for adjournment? So moved by Mr. Tankersley, second by Mr. Wilson. All those in favor say yes. Yes. Those opposed, no, and we do stand adjourned.